we mentioned was the grouped frequency distribution. We learned how to find the relative frequency if we have the frequency. So for example, here, the classes are from 0 to 3. The first class is from 0 to 3. The number of observations between 0 and 3 are 60. This is the frequency. Now, how to find the relative frequency? We divide 60 by 230, which is the total. We get 0.261. Okay, so this is how we find the relative frequencies. Now, we would like to learn here about cumulative frequency distribution, and cumulative relative frequency distribution. So how to find the cumulative frequency and the cumulative relative frequency. The definition is important here. The cumulative frequency displays the number of observations with values less than or equal to the upper limit. So less than or equal to the upper limit of each class. So for example, to find the cumulative frequency, this number, how did we find this number, 60? We count the number of observations with values less than or equal to the upper limit. The upper limit here is 3. So how many observations are less than or equal to 3? How many values are less than or equal to 3? Between 0 and 3, we have 60. So all the 60 would be less than or equal to 3, for sure. So we will have here 60 numbers. So always, the first number in the frequency would be the first number in the cumulative frequency. Now, how to find 110? I need the number of observations with values less than or equal to the upper limit. The upper limit is 7. So if I ask you, how many observations are less than or equal to 7? How many values are less than or equal to 7? 0, 3, less than 7. 0, 3, less than 7. From 4 to 7, all of them are also less than 7. So all of these, in fact, are less than 7. So if you add 60 plus 50, you will get the number of observations that are less than or equal to 7. So 60 plus 50 will give you 110. And so on. So the number of observations less than or equal to 11, you add 47, so you get 157. The number of observations less than or equal to 15, you add 40 to 157, you get 197. So this is how we get the cumulative frequency. So if he asks me a question, how many observations are less than or equal to 27? Your answer should be 229. So this is the cumulative frequency. Similarly, we can talk about cumulative relative frequency. The first number should be the first number in the relative frequency. We need here, we don't have number here, we have a proportion. So the definition would be the proportion of observations with values less than or equal to the upper limit of each class. So what is the proportion of observations with values less than or equal to 3.261? Right. What is the proportion of observations less than or equal to 7? Less than or equal to 7, you have 2. So you add 0.261 plus 0.217. This is the proportion. The relative frequency is the proportion. Here we have numbers, here we have proportions. So 0.217 plus 0.261 will give you 0.478. What is the proportion of the values less than or equal to 11? you add 0.204 to 0.478, you get 0.683, and so on. This is the cumulative relative frequency. So if he asks you, he gives you this table, and he asks you, what is the proportion of observations with values less than or equal to 27? Your answer should be 0.996. Of course, the last number in the cumulative frequency, the last number should be n, اللي هو 230. لأنه if you add all of them, you get 230. Also, the last number in the proportions in the cumulative relative frequency should be 1, because if you add all the proportions, you should get 1. All these proportions here, the sum here is 1. All right. This is the cumulative frequency and the cumulative relative frequency. Now let us go to the next point, which is the histogram. Before the histogram, let us solve some exercises about what we learned. So let me solve 2.2. Assuming you have data for a variable with 2000 values, so this is small n. Using this guideline, what is the smallest number of groups or classes that should be used in developing a group data frequency distribution? To develop a group data frequency distribution, the first step is to determine the number of classes. The question here, what is the smallest number of classes? We said that the number of classes is k, and it should be greater than or equal to log or len. I can use len or log. I will use len here. I have 2000. I have 2000. So len 2000 divided by len 2. Okay. You can use the calculator and find len 2000 divided by len 2. The answer would be 10.96. Okay. So if we round this up, because k should be greater than or equal, then k would be 11. So the answer is 11. The number of classes, the smallest number of classes is 11. Okay. 2.23. 2.3. A study is being conducted in which a variable of interest has 1000 observations. This is again small n. The minimum value in the data set is 300 and the maximum is 2900. Okay, so we have the maximum and the minimum. Part A, use this formula or guideline to determine the minimum number of classes. Okay, the number of classes again. So to find the number of classes, we said that it is k, and it should be greater than or equal to len 1000 over len 2. Okay, if you find len 1000 over len 2, the answer is 9.97. So the number of classes would be 10. Okay, now after determining the number of classes in part B, based on the answer to part A, determine the class width. The next step is to determine the class width. Round up to the nearest 100 points. To determine the class width, we need the minimum and the maximum. They are given here in the question. The minimum is 300 and the maximum is 2900. So we subtract the maximum minus the minimum, and we divide by the number of classes in part A, which is 10. The answer would be 260. Now, he said we need to round up, of course. He said here, round up to the nearest 100 points. If you round this up, 260, if you round it to the nearest 100 points, you will go to 300. So the class width is 300, and that's the answer of 2.3. Okay, let us solve question 2.6. 2.6. is a question about understanding the frequency distribution. Do you really understand how the classes are formed? We form them, and what is the relation between frequency, cumulative frequency, and relative frequency? So let us think first of the classes. I have, if you count the number of classes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 classes. And here he's using less than. He will start from 4 to a number, and again from this number to 12. You see here 12, and here we have 12. But 12 is included in the third class. It is not included in the second class because here it is less than 12. Okay, so how to determine the class width? You can think of the class width as follows. If you look, for example, to the first, these classes, 3 classes. Let us say to the first 2 classes. 2 classes. The first class is from 4 to a number, and the second class is from this number to 12. Okay, so can I find the width of the 2 classes? The width of the 2 classes? Yeah, if you subtract 12 minus 4, it would be 8. 8 should be the length of the first 2 classes. So if you subtract 8 by 2, you get 4, which is the width. So the width of each class is 4. So here you put 4 plus 4, 8. And this is again 8. From 8 to 12, from 12 to, you add 4, 16. From 16, you write again here 16. And 16 to 20, and 22, you add 4, 24. طبعا notice إنه this is different than what we, يعني this method, when I write from 0 to and under 2 to 5, you will see 2 to 5 here and here. Okay, but if you do not write it like this, if you write it like this, from 0 to 3, from 4 to 7, then you will not see 4 here and 4 here. But there are 2 ways to write the boundaries, the classes. Both are correct. It's no problem. You can write it from 0 to 3, or you can write it from 0 to less than 4. But this is also the same. It means that 4 is not there. Here he did it like this, طبعا, from 0 to, from 4 to less than to 8. But this is how we find the classes. Now look to the relation between frequency, cumulative frequency, and relative frequency. In the first class, we know only the cumulative frequency, 5. Can we find the frequency from here? Yeah, the frequency should be 5. Because we said both frequency and the cumulative frequency are equal in the first row. Okay, how to find the relative frequency? We need n, the total number of observations. Can we find the total number of observations from the table? Yeah, the last number here, the last number in the cumulative frequency should be, as we said, n, the total number of observations. So if you divide here 5 by 50, you get 0.1, or the relative frequency of the first class. Okay, so the relative frequency is 0.1. In the second class, we have the relative frequency 0.34 only. So if you have the relative frequency, what can you find? Can you find the frequency? Multiply. Yeah, remember here, yeah, that's the relative frequency. The definition is frequency over n. So if you have the relative frequency and you need to find the frequency, you multiply n times the relative frequency. You multiply n times the relative frequency. So n is 50, and the relative frequency is 0.34. So you multiply, and the answer is 17. فإذا the frequency here is 17. How can we get the cumulative frequency? We add 17 plus 5, 22.
22.
Okay, let us go to the third row, the third class. We have the frequency. If you have the frequency, you can add it to get the cumulative relative frequency, and you can divide 7 by 50 to get 0.14. Type. In the fourth row, the fourth class, I have the relative frequency. So 0.18, I multiply by 50. I get what?
9.
9. And you add 9 to 29, you'll get 38. 38. Now the last class, I have only the cumulative frequency, which is 50. Can I find the frequency from here?
Yes.
50 minus 38. 50 minus 38, okay? It would be 12. And then 12 divided by 50 will give you what? 24. Now to check your answer, the sum of all relative frequencies should be
1.
1. So you need to add 0.1 plus 0.34 plus 0.14 plus 0.18 plus 0.24. You will find it 1. So this answer is correct. Okay, if you have any question, we will inshallah answer it after the end of the lecture. Now let us go to the next point, which is about histograms. Well, a histogram, it's a graph that displays the frequency distribution. So you see the frequency distribution as a graph. So you have a horizontal axis and a vertical axis, okay? In the horizontal axis, you put the classes. Here, you put the classes. And here you put the frequency. Okay, the frequency count, you put it on the vertical axis. خلاص. So for example, this is a frequency histogram. This is called the frequency histogram. For example, I have this frequency distribution. This is the data here are discrete. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each class consists of one number. It's not grouped. This is the frequency of each class. So I can sketch the frequency distribution, the frequency histogram. This is the histogram. The first class, I put the classes here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each class consists of one number. And then I put the frequency here. So the 0, the class of 0, has frequency 4. 1 goes to 5. 2 goes to 11, and so on. So this is called a histogram, frequency histogram. If he asks about relative frequency histogram, then you need to put the relative frequencies on the y-axis. Well, what do you get from this shape, from this graph? You get 3 things. You can determine the center of the data. Where is the center of the data? So the center here is 2 point something, 2.5, 2.6, because the largest 2 columns are here at 2 and 3. Here you have 3 histograms with different centers. Okay, center here is 400, around 400, here around 300, here 550. Centers are different. You can see the center explicitly from the histogram. You can see also the spread of the data, spread, the variability of the data. Here, which shape, which data is more spread here? Part C. C has more spread. It's from 250 to 550 maybe. But the data are more spread here in part C. Less spread in part B. Okay. Also you can determine the shape of the distribution. We will study mound shaped. For part A, approximately mound shaped. Also by maybe not mound B. Yani we need some more 2 columns here. Also you can determine the shape. So you can determine 3 things: the center, the spread, and the shape of the distribution from the histogram. Let us answer some questions and stop here. Let us answer question 2.5. This is a long question. Let us do it together. So the first part would be, I have a discrete data here, and the first part is construct a frequency distribution for this data using this guideline to determine the number of classes. Okay, to determine the number of classes, I need to know how many values are there. So what is n? How many values are there? So if you count, you have 5 columns and 12 rows. So 5 times 12, you have 60 values. So there are 60 values. So to determine the number of classes, k would be len 60 over len 2. It's not equal to, it is not equal to, it should be greater than or equal. If you find len 60 divided by len 2, it would be 5 point something, 5.9. So you round it up. So the number of classes would be 6. Part B, develop a relative frequency distribution using the classes you constructed in Part A. Okay, so to develop a frequency distribution, I need to go to the second step, which is determining W, the class width. I need the maximum and the minimum. So if you look here into the data, the maximum is 17 and there is 0, the minimum. So 17 is the largest value minus the smallest value divided by the number of classes, which is 6. So the answer would be 17 divided by 6, 2.83. You round it up, and you take the class width to be 3. Once you have the class width, you can start forming the classes or the class boundaries. You can start from any number you like. Okay, the smallest is 0, so I will start from 0. And the width is 3, so you can add 3 vertically. 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 2, 4, 6 classes. From 0 to, if you want, you can write it from 0 to less than 3. You can do that, okay? And you can write from 0 to 2. Because 2 is less than 3. And then you add 3 here. So 2 plus 3, 5 plus 3, 8 plus 3, 11 plus 3, 14 plus 3, 17. So these are the class boundaries. And now I need to count how many values in each class. And counting how many values in each class is not really easy because I have 60 values. So to not making mistakes, I will do the following. I will read the values, okay, 4 by 4, and put them here into the classes. So for example, 8, 11, 9, 7, 8 is here, 11 is here, 9 also is here, and 7 is here. So I put the numbers into the classes, okay? But then I have 12, 10, 11, 8. 12, 10, 11, 8. Okay? But then 9, 7, 14, 1. 9 is the 5th value, so I'll make it like this. 9, 7, 14, 1. This is the first column. The second column, 6, 9, 5, 8. 6 is here, 9 is here, 5 is here, 8 is here. Okay. 7, 8, 16, 4. 7, 8, 16, and 4. 9, 9, 2, 1. 9, 9, 2, 1. I finished the second column. The third column, 11, 7, 5, 4. 11, 7, 5, 4. 8, 6, 2, 4. 8, 6, 2, 4. 6, 5, 9, 12. 6, 5, 9, 12. I finished the third column. 14 to 5, 17. 14 to 5, 17. 8, 9, 7, 5. 8, 9, 7, 5. 8, 9, 7, 5, 6, 4, 0, 11. 6, 4, 0, 11. The last column, 10, 8, 12, 8. 10, 8, 12, 8. 7, 9, 4, 5. 7, 9, 4, 5. 7, 5, 6, 4. 7, 5, 6, 4. So you can do it like this. Concentrate. You do it quickly. It takes 3-4 minutes. And then you write the frequency. The frequency here 6. You add. Each pile is 5. So here you have 13. And here you have 17. 10, 22. And here you have 12. And here you have 5. And here you have 2. If you add all of these numbers, you should get 60. So 19 plus 22 plus another 19, yeah, you get 60. So you have all the numbers correct. Okay. So this is the frequency distribution. This should be part, develop a relative frequency distribution. So I should find the relative frequency. To find the relative frequency, you divide 6 by 60, so you get 0.1 and so on. Okay, I leave it for you to do it. The relative frequency, the total relative frequency should be 1. Part C, develop a cumulative frequency distribution and a cumulative relative frequency distribution using the classes in part A. So part C, I need to find the cumulative frequency, which is 6. I add the 13. I add the 22. It would be 41. I add the 12. I add the 5. I add the 2. The last number should be 60. Also, you can find the cumulative relative frequency. You can do it similarly. The first one is 0.1 and you add, and the last number here should be 1. So this is part C. Part D, develop a histogram based on the frequency distribution. So this should be the histogram. I put the classes on the x-axis. I can put the classes in different ways. I prefer this way. I will write 0 here to 3 here. So I will make the classes continuous. I will take the first column, 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then if I add another 3, it would be 18. So these are the classes. And the frequencies up to 22, if I had 5, I have 5, 10, 15, 20, okay? If I go by 5, okay. Now the first class has 6 observations. So up to here, this is 6. This is the first class. The second class has 13 observations. So it goes up to 13, okay. Third class has 22 observations. So it goes to 22. And then 12. And then 5. Then 2. So this is the histogram. That's the solution of, طبعا here you can write the frequency. He asked about frequency distribution, so I put the frequency here and the classes there. If he asks about a relative frequency distribution, then I will write the relative frequency on the y-axis. This is the end of this lecture. If you have any question, you are